The Western Chalukyan Empire ruled most of the western Deccan, South India, between the 10th and 12th centuries. This Karnataka dynasty is sometimes called the Kalyani Chalukya after its regal capital at Kalyani, today's Bishvakalyan in Karnataka, and alternatively the later Chalukya from its theoretical relationship to the 6th century Chalukya dynasty of Badami. The dynasty is called Western Chalukyas to differentiate from the contemporaneous Eastern Chalukyas of Vengi, a separate dynasty. Prior to the rise of these Chalukyas, the Rashtrakuta Empire of Mlpkr controlled most of Deccan and central India for over 2 centuries. In 973, seeing confusion in the Rashtrakuta Empire after a successful invasion of their capital by the ruler of the Paramara dynasty of Malwa, Mlpkr II, a feudatory of the Rashtrakuta dynasty ruling from Bijapur region, defeated his overlords and made Mlpkr his capital. The dynasty quickly rose to power and grew into an empire under Someshvara I, who moved the capital to Kalyani. For over a century, the two empires of southern India, the Western Chalukyas and the Chola dynasty of Tanur, fought many fierce wars to control the fertile region of Vengi. During these conflicts, the Eastern Chalukyas of Vengi, distant cousins of the Western Chalukyas but related to the Cholas by marriage, took sides with the Cholas, further complicating the situation. During the rule of Vikramaditya VI, in the late 11th and early 12th centuries, the Western Chalukyas convincingly contended with the Cholas and reached a peak, ruling territories that spread over most of the Deccan, between the Narmada River in the north and Kaveri River in the south. His exploits were not limited to the south, for even as a prince, during the rule of Someshvara I, he had led successful military campaigns as far east as modern Bihar and Bengal. During this period, the other major ruling families of the Deccan, the Hoysalas, the Yadavas of Devagiri, the Kakatiya dynasty and the southern Kalashuri, were subordinates of the Western Chalukyas and gained their independence only when the power of the Chalukya waned during the later half of the 12th century. The Western Chalukyas developed an architectural style known today as a transitional style, an architectural link between the style of the early Chalukya dynasty and that of the later Hoysala Empire. Most of its monuments are in the districts bordering the Tungabhadra River in central Karnataka. Well-known examples are the Kasavisvesvara temple at Lakundi, the Mallikarjuna temple at Kuruvati, the Kallavara temple at Bagalai and the Mahadeva temple at Ataji. This was an important period in the development of fine arts in southern India, especially in literature, as the Western Chalukya kings encouraged writers in the native language Kannada and Sanskrit. History. Knowledge of Western Chalukya history has come through examination of the numerous Kannada language inscriptions left by the kings, and from the study of important contemporary literary documents in Western Chalukya literature such as Gadayuddha in Kannada by Rana and Vikramankadeva Charitam in Sanskrit by Bilhana. The earliest record is dated 957. During the rule of Mlpkr II, when the Western Chalukyas were still a feudatory of the Rashtrakutas, and Mlpkr II governed from Tardavadi in present-day Bijapur district, Karnataka. The genealogy of the kings of this empire is still debated. One theory, based on contemporary literary and inscriptional evidence plus the finding that the Western Chalukyas employed titles and names commonly used by the early Chalukyas, suggests that the Western Chalukya kings belong to the same family line as the illustrious Badami Chalukya dynasty of 6th century. While other Western Chalukya inscriptional evidence indicates they were a distinct line unrelated to the early Chalukyas, the record suggests a possible rebellion by a local Chalukya king, Chatagadeva of Banavasi 12000 province, in alliance with local Kadamba chieftains. This rebellion, however, was unfruitful but paved the way for his successor Mlpkr II. A few years later, Taylapa II re-established Chalukya rule and defeated the Rashtrakutas during the reign of Karka II by timing his rebellion to coincide with the confusion caused in the Rashtrakuta capital of Mlpkr by the invading Paramaras of central India in 973. After overpowering the Rashtrakutas, Taylapa II moved his capital to Mlpkr and consolidated the Chalukya Empire in the Western Deccan by subjugating the Paramara and other aggressive rivals and extending his control over the land between the Narmada River and Tungabhadra River. However, some inscriptions indicate that Balagamva in Mysore territory may have been a power centre up to the rule of Someshvara I in 1042. The intense competition between the kingdom of the Western Deccan and those of the Tamil country came to the fore in the 11th century over the acutely contested fertile river valleys in the Durb region of the Krishna and Godavari River called Vengi. The Western Chalukyas and the Chola dynasty fought many bitter wars over control of this strategic resource. The imperial Cholas gained power during the time of the famous king Rajaraja Chola I and the crown prince Rajendra Chola I. The Eastern Chalukyas of Vengi were cousins of the Western Chalukyas but became increasingly influenced by the Cholas through their marital ties with the Tamil kingdom. As this was against the interests of the Western Chalukyas, they wasted no time in involving themselves politically and militarily in Vengi. When King Satyashraya succeeded Taylapa II to the throne, he was able to protect his kingdom from Chola aggression as well as his northern territories in Konkan and Gujarat, although his control over Vengi was shaky. His successor, Jayasimha II, fought many battles with the Cholas in the south around c. 1020–21 when both these powerful kingdoms struggled to choose the Vengi king. Shortly thereafter in c. 1024, Jayasimha II subdued the Paramara of central India and the rebellious Yadava king Balama. It is known from records that Jayasimha's son Someshvara I, whose rule historian Sen considers a brilliant period in the Western Chalukya rule, moved the Chalukya capital to Kalyani in c. 1042. Hostilities with the Cholas continued while both sides won and lost battles, though neither lost significant territory during the ongoing struggle to install a puppet on the Vengi throne. In 1068 Someshvara I, suffering from an incurable illness, drowned himself in the Tungabhadra River. Despite many conflicts with the Cholas in the south, Someshvara I had managed to maintain control over the northern territories in Konkan, Gujarat, Malwa and Kalinga during his rule. His successor, his eldest son Someshvara II, feuded with his younger brother, Vikramaditya VI, an ambitious warrior who had initially been governor of Gangavadi in the southern Deccan when Someshvara II was the king. Before 1068, even as a prince, Vikramaditya VI had invaded Bengal, weakening the ruling Pala Empire. These incursions led to the establishment of Khanate dynasties such as the Sena dynasty and Valman dynasty in Bengal, and the Nayanadeva dynasty in Bihar. Married to a Chola princess, Vikramaditya VI maintained a friendly alliance with them. After the death of the Chola king in 1070, Vikramaditya VI invaded the Tamil kingdom and installed his brother-in-law, Adarajendra, on the throne, creating conflict with Kulodunga Chola I, the powerful ruler of Vengi who sought the Chola throne for himself. At the same time, Vikramaditya VI undermined his brother, Someshvara II, by winning the loyalty of the Chalukya feudatories, the Hoysala, the Cnr and the Kadambas of Hangal. Anticipating a civil war, Someshvara II sought help from Vikramaditya VI's enemies, Kulodunga Chola I and the Kadambas of Goa. In the ensuing conflict of 1076, Vikramaditya VI emerged victorious and proclaimed himself king of the Chalukya Empire. The 50-year reign of Vikramaditya VI, the most successful of the later Chalukya rulers, was an important period in Karnataka's history and is referred to by historians as the Chalukya Vikrama era. Not only was he successful in controlling his powerful feudatories in the north and south, he successfully dealt with the imperial Cholas, whom he defeated in the Battle of Vengi in 1093 and again in 1118. He retained this territory for many years despite ongoing hostilities with the Cholas. This victory in Vengi reduced the Chola influence in the eastern Deccan and made him emperor of territories stretching from the Kaveri River in the south to the Narmada River in the north, earning him the titles Permadadeva and Tribhuvanamala. The scholars of his time paid him glowing tributes for his military leadership, interest in fine arts and religious tolerance. Literature proliferated and scholars in Kannada and Sanskrit adorned his court. Poet Bilhana, who immigrated from faraway Kashmir, eulogized the king in his well-known work Vikramanka Devacharita. Vikramaditya VI was not only an able warrior but also a devout king, as indicated by his numerous inscriptions that record grants made to scholars and centers of religion. The continual warring with the Cholas exhausted both empires, giving their subordinates the opportunity to rebel. In the decades after Vikramaditya VI's death in 1126, the empire steadily decreased in size as their powerful feudatories expanded in autonomy and territorial command. The time period between 1150 and 1200 saw many hard-fought battles between the Chalukyas and the feudatories, who were also at war with each other. By the time of Jagaday Kamala II, the Chalukyas had lost control of Vengi and his successor, Tailapa III, was defeated by the Kakatiya king Prola in 1149. Tailapa III was taken captive and later released, bringing down the prestige of the Western Chalukyas. Seeing decadence and uncertainty seeping into Chalukya rule, the Hoysalas and Seyones also encroached upon the empire. Hoysala Narasimha I defeated and killed Tailapa III but was unable to overcome the Kalashuras, who were vying for control of the same region. In 1157 the Kalashuras under Bijala II captured Kalyani and occupied it for the next 20 years, forcing the Chalukyas to move their capital to a Nigeri in the present-day Dharwad district. The Kalashuras were originally immigrants into the southern Deccan from central India and called themselves Kalanjara Puravaradi Savaras. Bijala II and his ancestors had governed as Chalukya commanders over the Karhad 4000 and Tardavadi 1000 provinces with Mangalivadra or Nigeria's their capital. Bijala II's Chikalaji record of 1157 calls him Mahabujabala Chakravarti, indicating he no longer was a subordinate of the Chalukyas. However, the successors of Bijala II were unable to hold on to Kalyani, and their rule ended in 1183 when the last Chalukya scion, Samshvara IV, made a final bid to regain the empire by recapturing Kalyani. Kalashuri king Samkama was killed by Chalukya general Narasimha in this conflict. During this time, Hoysala Veerabalala II was growing ambitious and clashed on several occasions with the Chalukyas and the other claimants over their empire. He defeated Chalukya Samshvara IV and Seyonar Balala V, bringing large regions in the Krishna River Valley under the Hoysala domains, but was unsuccessful against Kalashuras. The Seyones under Balama V were on an imperialistic expansion too when the Chalukyas regained Kalyani. Their ambitions were temporarily stemmed by their defeat against Chalukya general Bama in 1183, but they later had their vengeance in 1189. The overall effort by Samshvara IV to rebuild the Chalukyan Empire failed, and the dynasty was ended by the Seyonar rulers who drove Samshvara IV into exile in Banavaja 1189. After the fall of the Chalukyas, the Seyones and Hoysalas continued warring over the Krishna River region in 1191, each inflicting a defeat on the other at various points in time. This period saw the fall of two great empires, the Chalukyas of the Western Deccan and the Cholas of Mlpkr. On the ruins of these two empires were built the kingdoms of their feudatories whose mutual antagonisms filled the annals of Deccan history for over 100 years. The Pandyas taking control over some regions of the erstwhile Chola Empire. Administration. The Western Chalukya kingship was hereditary, passing to the king's brother if the king did not have a male heir. The administration was highly decentralized and feudatory clans such as the Mlpkr, the Hoysalas, the Karkatiya, the Sianar, the southern Kalashuri and others were allowed to rule their autonomous provinces, paying an annual tribute to the Chalukya emperor. Excavated inscriptions record titles such as Mahapradana, Samtivigrahika, and Amadekari. Some positions such as Tadayadan were specialized in function while all ministerial positions included the role of Dandanayaka, showing that cabinet members were trained as army commanders as well as in general administrative skills. The kingdom was divided into provinces such as Banavasi 12000, Nolambavadi 32000, Gangavadi 96000, each name including the number of villages under its jurisdiction. The large provinces were divided into smaller provinces containing a lesser number of villages, as in Belavola 300. The big provinces were called mandala and under them were nadu, further divided into kampanas and finally abada. A mandala was under a member of the royal family, a trusted feudatory or a senior official. Talupatu himself was in charge of Tardavadi province during the Rashtrakuta rule. Chiefs of mandalas were transferable based on political developments. For example, an official named Bamanaya administered Banavasi 12000 under King Samshvara III but was later transferred to Halasige 12000. Women from the royal family also administered nadas and kampanas. Army commanders were titled Mahamandaleshwaras and those who headed a nadu were entitled Nadagawanda. The Western Chalukyas minted punch-marked gold pagodas with Kannada and Nagari legends which were large, thin gold coins with several varying punch marks on the obverse side. They usually carried multiple punches of symbols such as a stylized lion, Shri in Kannada, a spearhead, the king's title, a lotus and others. Jayasimha II used the legend Sri Jaya. Samshvara I issued coins with Sri Trailokamala. Samshvara II used Bhuvanikamalā. Lakshmideva's coin carried Srilasha, and Jagadekamalatu coinage had the legend Sri Jagad. The Mlpkr, a feudatory, minted coins with the Kannada and Nagari legend Sri Pandya Dhanam Jaya. Lakkundi in Gadag district and Sudi in Dharwad district were the main mints. Their heaviest gold coin was Gadunaka weighing 96 grains, Drama weighted 65 grains, Kalandu 48 grains, Kasu 15 grains, Manjadi 2.5 grains, Akan 1.25 grains and Panna 9.6 grain.